Final Fantasy VII is the best game of all time. With games like Cloud Strife in them, you can't lose. I know what you're thinking. The compilation of Final Fantasy VII has too many RPGs in them. Crisis Core, Before Crisis. What? Who? Huh? What we need is a third-person shooter. And you're so right. It's the mid-2000s. Guns are hot. They're in. All the mascots are getting them. Shadow the Hedgehog, Jak and Daxter. I'm surprised we didn't get a Crash Bandicoot shooter. I really feel like Crash could have.
I think he has it in him.
Luckily, Final Fantasy VII already has a gun dude. Not only does he have a rich backstory that wasn't really delved into much in the base game, he has cool demon transformations that chumbios everywhere will lust over, and the fashion sense of Hot Topic with a dash of Spencer's gifts. Not my gifts, the store with the with all the dildos. Having any Final Fantasy VII related media without Cloud or Sephiroth is a risky gambit. But Vincent has connection to Shinra, the Turks, Hojo, and a whole bunch of other interesting stuff connected to the world's lore, so he's probably the best choice for the most interesting character you could follow within the main group. So, enter stage left, Dirge of Cerberus, Final Fantasy VII. The narrative that lies... Lays? Lay? The narrative that lies. The narrative that lay... The narrative that lie? No. The latest on the Final Fantasy VII timeline outside of the very brief opening to Advent Children with Red 13 all those years later when the rest of the cast are skeletons. But we'll talk about the plot in a minute because I think first it's important to go into how Final Fantasy VII works as a third-person shooter. The answer is, well, it's interesting. It could be worse. It could be a lot worse. Honestly, it's smoother than you would think for a third-person PlayStation 2 shooter, especially one made by Square Enix. They had assistance from a Monolith Soft. Hello, base department. You can use a bunch of different guns to mow down these like 2000s Matrix grunts with neon lines throughout their body. It's very 2006 game. The shots feel decent enough when they hit, but there's this weird big circle. Put it right here, Future Ace Bonanza. There's a big aiming circle that helps you auto aim, and from my perspective, it takes up a little too much of the screen. But I can imagine that without the auto aim thing, this game would be it would be a little it's bad. It would be a little frustrating without it. There's a bunch of different guns, like you get a couple rifles and you get machine gun, but the best thing is that, you know, his iconic Cerberus pistol. You can pretty easily make it do insane damage and have wild reach. So the other ones are kind of useful in little areas. You're going to use the pistol. It's one of those games. You're going to find the one weapon that you like, which is the pistol, and you're going to use that the whole game, except when you run out of ammo. And you'll be shooting down enemies like you are... Oh, I can't say that. Oh. Ooh. I gotta stop outsourcing the script to Fiverr. Also, you can do Vincent's Limit Break and turn into the Galian Beast to do some special attacks, but it doesn't really feel all that special. You can do this, like, you throw a projectile kind of blast, and you can do some powerful punches, but otherwise, you know, for something that you use an item to do, it doesn't feel as limit breaky as it should. You also get to be Chaos at the end, but where's the other forms? Where's the... come on, I want to be Hellmasker. I want to be Gigas. I want to be a big Frankenstein. I want to chainsaw bad guys. I want to infringe on some copywritten properties. For the version that was released to us silly Westerners, Square Enix made a bunch of changes to make it run a bit smoother, and you know, for the most part, they are appreciated changes. Vincent runs quicker. The shooting angle is more like behind Vincent's back rather than shoulder to make aiming a bit easier. Limit breaks come from an item instead of your magic meter, which I don't really think that makes a huge difference, but I get why they did it. And best of all, the useless double jump. Vincent can now jump twice like Crash Bandicoot or Dante, but the game was designed with the single jump in mind, and that's how it was released in Japan. So the double jump doesn't actually really do anything. Vincent can defy gravity just a little as a treat. They also took out the multiplayer mode, which had cool little story details that filled in the background of the game, which is, you know, it would have been cool to have that, but that was a strange period, wasn't it? Everything had little multiplayer modes before online. I remember Shadow the Hedgehog had a multiplayer mode where you could battle your friends in a weird platformer arena shooter. And you played as Shadow and a bunch of multicolored robot shadows. That was a strange thing. That was strange. Story time, baby. I'm going to be spoiling stuff since this takes place the end of the Final Fantasy VII timeline, and a couple characters showed up in Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade, Yuffie's little story thing. So who knows if any of this shit's going to be used in the remake timeline, but this is your warning. So Cloud and company killed Sephiroth, and Aerith's Holy saved the planet from Meteor, even though it did immense damage to Midgar. Hojo seemingly got by the fellas towards the end of the original game, if you recall. Then, in the movie, a bunch of people got space hepatitis, 3 twinks became Sephiroth, but Cloud owned him once again, leading to rain that cured the hepatitis and allowing Cloud to move past the deaths of Zack and Aerith. The start of Dirge of Cerberus explains why Vincent and Yuffie were not present in the FMV cutscene at the end of Final Fantasy VII. I mean this narratively, because the real reason is that they were optional characters added late in development. In universe, they were helping to evacuate Midgar during Meteor Fall. But while doing that, Vincent sees Hojo's corpse on top of Sister Ray. What's that about? What's that all about? You may remember Hojo as the guy that cucked Vincent and made Sephiroth a thing, and made a whole bunch of other crazy, noisy, bizarre stuff happen. Remember when he tried to get Red 13 to breed with Aerith? That was a strange moment, even for Final Fantasy VII. Very horny game, by the way, in case you've never played it. But even for that was a weird moment. Hojo's body vanishes, and then everyone's like, well, that's probably fine. 3 years later, Vincent is chilling in calm, no doubt enjoying the fact that he doesn't have to sit through a long-ass flashback cutscene. Next thing you know, boom! Helicopter attack by a secret Shinra organization called Deepground, which is a less creative name than they think, because they're from under the ground. It's a group of super-powered edgelords who were too strong and too dangerous for Shinra, so they tossed them underground, and then they had people called the Tsviets, who were too dangerous and too badass for even Deepground. And they're all named after colors with descriptors that are colors. So it's color the color. It's like Black Noir in The Boys. There's Rosso the Crimson, who is a hot redhead who talks like a Dracula. Azul the Cerulean, who is a big troll man that can turn into Pig Ganondorf. Nero the Sable, who is into bondage and has very 2000s tribal tattoos. Everyone had them back then. Other iconic video game characters like Crash Bandicoot and Jesse Pinkman. The leader, Vice the Immaculate, who has gun swords, but not the Final Fantasy gun swords, a different kind of gun sword. And Shulk the Transparent, a lightsaber-wielding 19-year-old who looks 9 because of experiments. They do that. Come on now. We don't need to be doing that. It's always gonna raise an eyebrow when characters like that pop up. On the other side, the good boys is the World Regenesis Organization, or WRO, led by Reeve Tuesti / Kate Sith. They're trying to fix the planet and keep people safe, and I actually never ran into this line when I played it originally, but if you talk to Reeve at one point on the airship, he kind of hints that Rufus Shinra is financing the WRO. Because he feels he owes the planet a debt. And that's a neat little detail. That's a cool thing. I like that. Go off, white boy. Fix that planet you nearly decimated. Deepground seemingly wants to trigger the awakening of Omega, not from Soul. It's a weapon like Emerald weapon and all those that basically kills everybody and puts them in the life stream, and then takes the life stream and flies off to space to restart the cycle of life, leaving the barren planet floating around like a dead goldfish. This is going to sound fake, but I had a fish that killed itself. The day after I got him, I woke up and he wasn't in his little tank. And I thought that was strange. My parents were like, he has to be in there. And we looked around, we couldn't see him. And it was weird because he was like a beta fish. So we were like, where could he have gone? He's pretty noticeable. He's pretty colorful. And it turns out that overnight he jumped out of the tank and landed on the heat vent under the dresser the tank was on and died. within 12 hours of me getting him. I cried all morning. And now I don't even remember his name. There's a surprisingly deep lore to it all, with Meteorfall more or less freeing Deepground from these bad guys that were called the Restrictors that kept them underground because of how cool and dangerous they were. So then, because when they kill a Restrictor, a virus is unleashed in Vice, which was meant to stop him from killing the Restrictors, and that virus slowly kills him. But Hojo, from the beginning, uploaded himself into the internet, the fascinating new thing, the internet, renamed himself Grok, and then puppets Vice's body to make the Tsviets summon Omega using Geostigma-free, Genova-free natural Mako energy from Reactor 0, I think, which is where the Tsviets were. I mean, beyond new characters and stuff like that, you do get more depth to Vincent's backstory, as you would hope from a game that stars Vincent. It was presented pretty minimally in Final Fantasy VII because of how late he was added into development, especially because of how in-depth the backstory actually is. But you get to learn a lot more about his relationship with Lucrezia and his Turk work and his deal with Hojo, their whole deal with each other, his very comically 2000s edge named dad, Grimoire Valentine. I miss how earnest the 2000s were about cool edgy shit. We got to get back to that. Vincent's whole thing with the chaos materia is explained better, and how he can control it using the proto materia, which is something only he has, and how chaos relates to Omega and a bunch of legends. There's a surprising amount of lore introduced here, and also surprisingly, it doesn't really break anything about the original game. It's not like essential, but a lot of it is pretty cool, and I dig Omega as a concept, and I think it fits well with the life stream and all that cool stuff from Final Fantasy VII. Expanding Vincent's backstory is also obviously a very exciting thing, and I like the details it adds. And you even get to see him sit outside the Lucrezia crystal in HD, all mopey, which is pretty cool. Also, Yuffie's in the game a lot, and that makes me happy because she's one of my favorite characters from Final Fantasy VII, and I had a big old crush on her and Tifa when I played the original game as a kid. Still got a big crush on Tifa. Who doesn't? I like that Dirge kind of gives Yuffie and Vincent this almost meta friendship where they're close with each other, and it's mostly because they both weren't in the ending of the original game because they're both optional characters. I like that because it means that they were hanging out, and they seem to frequently hang out, and they vibe with each other despite them being very opposite personalities. I don't know. It's I like that a lot. That's one of my favorite parts of this game, is seeing them be pals. She also repeatedly hits her head like a cartoon character. And it's pretty funny. It makes me slap my feet together like a cartoon baby as I giggle and lol. There are even a rare couple of scenes where the whole Final Fantasy VII crew shows up, and it rocks. Well, not the whole crew. Red 13 doesn't until the very end. I read somewhere online when I was like a teenager that the reason Red 13 is only at the end of Dirge of Cerberus and really briefly in Advent Children is his fur was really expensive to animate. I couldn't find a source on that when I briefly Googled it yesterday, but it sounds vaguely believable. I'll leave it to you, the viewer, to decide. Email this address if you think he was cut because of how expensive his fur is, and email this address if you think he just didn't show up because he doesn't fucking care. I remember replaying the little scene of Cloud coming out of the big truck on his Fenrir motorcycle over and over as a teenager, because any new Cloud content was good Cloud content, and it was badass to see him do a brief little sword clash with Rosso. You do one very brief, pointless stealth section as Kate Sith, which Metal Gear, it ain't. Finally, the secret ending after a big kind of fight with the Omega Kaiju as Chaos Vincent shows Genesis Valentine. Nope. That's the Second Life player. Genesis Rhapsodos from Crisis Core, but this is before Crisis Core came out, so he was made for this. Fly down and say some stuff in seemingly Spanish accent. He has some kind of accent that he does not have in Crisis Core. And he picks up Vice. It's a very strange scene. I think they just included Gact as a new guy because Gact fucking rocks. Maybe the third remake part will do something with it. Who knows? The story is sort of sprawling and wild, and I've said it a few times, it's very 2000s in terms of its tone and its presentation and the wackiness and the leather costumes and the neon strips. But you know what? It was a cool time period. I don't mind. It certainly beats this time period. I am stoked to see if they try to implement this stuff more smoothly into the remake continuity, because in Intergrade you fight Nero and you can fight Vice as a VR boss. So they exist in canon, but I don't know how deep into Deepground they're going to get. Also, despite the mixed reception of the compilation of Final Fantasy VII, I'm a nasty pay pig for it. I love everything about it, so I will take every ounce of nostalgia slop returning Midgar lore I can fucking get. So I have no clue if any of this will matter to future games. So should you play it? It depends on how base you are. Dirge of Cerberus is currently the final major plot point entry thing on the timeline of Final Fantasy VII. So despite being an outlandish genre choice sequel game for a Final Fantasy RPG, one of the most acclaimed RPGs of all time, it adds a surprisingly massive amount to the lore without really ruining any of the previous story beats, in my opinion. So if you love the world of Final Fantasy VII and you want to spend more time in it, then yeah, give it a play. It's not expensive, it's easy to get to or to play on other devices. The shooting is tolerable and even fun sometimes. The story is very creative, and if nothing else, the characters still look pretty cool, but that might be the late millennial in me talking. If you're just looking for a cool shooter, is probably not gonna be it. I can't imagine playing this game without any Final Fantasy VII affinity or familiarity. But if you do, let me know what that psychosis is like, because I would be very interested to hear what you think of this plot if you have no attachment to anything involving Final Fantasy VII. But I say, give it a try, just in case Remake Part 3 decides to get into the Tsviets. And if not, well, you can say, hey, I played the Final Fantasy shooter, not the first soldier, not the battle royale. Then you can, yeah. I meant to write an ending here last night, but I forgot. So I'm just gonna say